Bronwen Wallace was one of the most promising writers of her generation, and she was a writer who died far too early. After she died in 1989, a group of her friends got together to talk about founding an award that would be named in her honor. And one of those friends was Carolyn Smart. And Carolyn had led the charge to found the Bronwen Wallace Award. Carolyn's a poet and a creative writing teacher at Queen's University in Kingston, and it's my pleasure to welcome her to the stage to say a few words about Bronwen's legacy. Carolyn.
Hi, everybody. Yesterday was Bronwen Wallace's birthday. She would be entering her 70th year now, but died far too young at the age of 44. Few of you here would have known her, and I'd like to tell you something about the kind of person she was. I first met her in the early 80s when she hosted a poetry reading in Kingston. We became immediate friends, and I used to drive from Toronto to visit her. People have often mentioned the fun of spending time with her, and it was true. From the rides on the Kingston Historical Tour train, in which she'd offer her alternative history, sotto voce, much to the horror of her son Jeremy, to the treats at the Italian ice cream parlor, or the face painting, and late night movies and laughter. It was always a pleasure. We read our work to each other in private, and we shared readings in public. She introduced me to many fellow Kingston writers, and eventually to a man I fell in love with, and I too moved to Kingston. I now live, by chance, within 2 kilometers of where Bronwen's parents met, where her father grew up on the Wallace Dairy Farm, where her mother taught in a one-room schoolhouse. Bronwen was a poet of place, a writer who drew her narratives from a particular landscape and community. And I am proud that I live in Bronwen Wallace country, outside Harrismith, Ontario, in the surreal and magical rocky landscape that she loved. I watched her career skyrocket. Within a period of 9 years, she wrote 5 volumes of poetry, a best-selling collection of short stories, and a book of essays. She served as writer-in-residence at Western and was a widely sought-after teacher and speaker, often on Morningside, chatting with ease and alacrity to Peter Zosky, corresponding with Dennis Lee, judging awards with Al Purdy and Gwendolyn McEwen, and writing book reviews, including a review that became one of Alice Munro's personal favorites, in which Bronwen, as only Bronwen could do, managed to review Munro's 1986 collection, The Progress of Love, by describing the making of chili sauce. But I came to know the full influence Bronwen had in the weeks before her death, when the letters and postcards and phone calls came pouring into her house from people whose lives she had touched. Many of those people were young, writers and artists whose work she had encouraged through her teaching at Queen's and at St. Lawrence College, through her editing at Quarry magazine, or through her groundbreaking feminist column every week in the Kingston Week Standard. Some had heard her speak in public about women's lives, or been residents or workers at Kingston Intiwa House, where she worked and founded the children's program. Some were political activists who had worked alongside her, sheltering draft dodgers and organizing around unions, founding daycares, or protesting at the House of Commons. Many would remember when she nailed her PhD thesis to her advisor's door at Queen's, when she withdrew from the program in response to a political decision on the part of the University Senate. Many would remember her kindness, her honesty, her righteous anger, her humor, and her deep sense of social justice. Nearly 800 people attended her memorial service at the Kingston Grand Theatre, including 2 teenagers who hitchhiked there from the prairies. I knew that a woman who had influenced so many should be honored and her legacy remembered well beyond her all too brief lifetime. I spoke to her about the possibility of an award in her name for emerging writers, and she was moved and very pleased and suggested it be awarded to writers below the age of 35 her age when her first book was published, to offer encouragement and real support early on. It took 5 years to raise the money for the first prize, awarded in 1994 to Michael Crummy, who at that point had to finally reveal his big secret, that he was indeed a writer. From that year onwards, the Bronwen Wallace Award for Emerging Writers has been one hell of a success story, with the incalculable help of the Writers' Trust. And I want to mention, especially in the early days, Nancy Craker, and more recently, the wonderful Dawn Orovec. And I've been very grateful to the Royal Bank of Canada for their serious support over the past 8 years, allowing the award greater visibility and outreach. It is nearly impossible to fathom the full effect that this award has achieved in 20 years. Let me just offer names of some previous finalists: Stephanie Bolster, Alyssa York, Tanis Rideout, Grace O'Connell, Robert McGill, Natalie Capel, Nancy Jo Cullum, Anita Leahy, Nathan Whitlock, Jeremy Dodds, Nicole Dixon, Rachel Rose, Padma Viswanathan, Marjorie Salona, Garth Martins, Kilby Smith-McGregor, Alison Pick, Jeff Latosik, Sonnet LaBey, Elizabeth Baczynski. This is an award that recognizes creative talent, that supports and encourages art from all over Canada, and reflects the commitment and influence of the woman for whom it was named. There is no greater privilege than to stand in this room, surrounded by such potential. This award honors us all. Thank you.